Welcome for the first time ever to the ERL Indycar Series, being broadcast not just here on BDS Formula 1 Motorsports, but highlights on UCable YT. As for how this preseason video is going to go, considering that it's the first one in our championship's history, I decided that we're going to take it a lot more like the earlier Formula E Monoposto Championship look-aheads. So today, let's just go through the grid, the championships calendar itself, and then the preseason test, which will also be held at Jerez, before we move over to the Americas for the entirety of the IndyCar season. And we're going to start off with McLaren, the team most known for taking the championship in Season 18 and still being quite the formidable foe even in Season 22 of the ERL Formula E Series. They've decided to join the IndyCar Series with this livery and this lineup. Francis Austin is their first driver. Partnered alongside him is Linus Eriksson, the Swede, making his first start in any official capacity. Then it's Hyperdrive Racing, most recently known for taking home the Season 17 ERL Formula E Series Championship with Revo in said season through acrimonious circumstances, if you ask Oscar Falstad. They return to the ERL this season in IndyCar with the lineup of Oqui, who returns from the FG Series, and Lewis Olsen, who has finally found work after being effectively dumped by Venturi. Then it's Revolution Racing, also returning from their experience in the FG Series, but with this livery that more resembles their time in Formula E back in Season 4. Tommy also hopped ship from Venturi to join the team, and alongside him, new driver from Pakistan. It's Hexel Mark making their first start in the number 68 car. Skipped over one. Apex Pinnacle returns to the ERL after leaving in certainly acrimonious circumstances at the end of Season 20, where they didn't complete the season and in fact were replaced around the end. They finally come back, being twinned with the Mercedes Formula E team, and their lineup featuring a former Mercedes driver in Carlos Sainz and Ghosted, making his first start of any capacity this season. Then Newman Haas Racing, with this certainly American designed livery, it will be great to see what they can do in their first starts of any capacity in the ERL. Little Buns returning from the FG Series, and TJ Davis partnering him alongside. Then Sims Motorsport, the team currently known for going for their first championship at the moment in Formula E, they are now trying to also take the IndyCar championship with it, with their lineup of Milsos Mjaika and Niven Colby. As for Mjaika, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, it's gonna be like that for a while. Then Dragon Penske returning for the first time, and once again I say this often, a long while. This is the livery that they were using in Season 19 when Lewis Olsen and I believe Tommy were at the team, but now in IndyCar they've got a different lineup. Introducing Mikian Gurovic and Ewa Puff from Scotland. Then Prema Power Team, the Italian squad being the second Italian squad on the grid. They hope to try and get some pretty good results, and considering their driver lineup of Safsan and Sebastian Messiaen, two rookies, everyone in the higher up ERL Formula E Series also hope for the two drivers to do quite well. Chip Ganassi Racing's up next, and stealing the DHL partnership from Andretti, that's why you didn't see DHL on the car this season. They've got a driver lineup of Elliot Deli and Carson Thornburg, an all-American lineup with one of these drivers coming from the FG Series and making a start last season in Formula E. Andretti is up next. Andretti Green Racing, just labeled as Andretti here, with the lineup of Kwan Todoroki, the first Japanese driver in either of our ERL leagues since Yuki Tsuo. And alongside him is Max Bortkar, I believe he's Dutch. I will make sure I have everything ready for round 1, I promise. But still, Andretti doing quite well in Formula E currently. They have seen a little bit of a slump, but they've always been in the shot of the championship there. Hopefully they can keep up that record here. Then, Power Motorsport. Reigning Formula E champions with only a handful of points to their name in the ERL Formula E series, they've also decided to join IndyCar with the same livery that they were using in season 21, with their lineup of David Camino, former Formula E driver, and Enoch Yu, also former Formula E driver. Now, the calendar for the first ever IndyCar series is as follows. We start the season in St. Petersburg, followed by Long Beach, then we head down to Texas and further down to Sao Paulo. Next up, Mexico City, making our way northwards. Then we head to Watkins Glen, in the Indianapolis road course, as Formula E makes their race down at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Then Music City in Nashville, Mid-Ohio, Road America. We return to Pikes Peak, then Barber, Detroit, and we end the season in Laguna Seca. But as for us, it's time to start the preseason test in Jerez. We have a lap followed by the pace car to start off. 16 laps around and here in Jerez, with only 15 of those being full racing laps. As you can see, the drivers being in single file following the pace car around the first lap. Pace car will pull into the pits and we will get back racing once we reach the penultimate turn on this opening lap, and then we can get back racing. Every lap is counted as a lap, but lap number 2 is the full racing lap. Looking at Carson Thornburg for Chip Ganassi, hasn't made a start in the ERL prior to this. This is a baptism of fire. Brand new league, brand new expectations for the man in the red helmet. Behind him, Tommy, who has expectations in spades, and he's going to be testing out the hard tire, which is going to be interesting to see. We actually have all 3 tire compounds provided by our tire supplier in Firestone in operation. You can see, with most of the field being on softs, meaning that they'll likely do a 2-stop strategy onto the mediums and then back onto the soft tires to end the preseason test as they head up the hill down the second of the 2 straights where push to pass is active, as he's following right behind. There are 2 different forms of push to pass in the ERL Formula E series. You have the active aero version and then the battery pack version. The battery pack version is usable across the entire length of the track, but we are about to get back racing for the first time in IndyCar history in the ERL. And here we go. This is it. They head down the hill into the final turn around Jerez, and we are underway for the preseason test in the ERL IndyCar Series. That's one of the Sims cars on the second lap of 16, trying to make a move. That's Milsos Majka from Poland, heading down into turn number 1. Carson Thornburg also trying to make a move. Not quite able to do it is Majka, but Thornburg takes the lead in the preseason test already. Brilliant move off the line. And that is quite the move, and you're likely to see a lot more of those as the season unfolds. You can see Miki Gurovic defending from Camno on board with the Romanian, trying to go around the outside of Gurovic, not quite able to do it. And in fact, that is the man under the neutral flag, fighting his way up into the points with Kui right in front of him, the Dutchman in the 99, and not Q setting a track limits warning. Get 4 of those and it's a slam dunk, 5-second time penalty. Little Buns making some moves as well. Francis Austin looking behind with the McLaren man down to 11th, but Carson Thornburg leading in the preseason test ahead of Ewa Puff and Tommy. Milsos Majka currently in 4th on the back of the Revolution Racing driver of Tommy, and In fact, on board we go with you, a Puff. He started this race from the front and lost out once we got underway. And I am treating this as a race because it is such high intensity. You're seeing so many drivers for the first time. The only thing I can truly relate this to is seasons 1 and 12 of the ERL Formula E series, because that's the only time you've had so many rookies on the field, and some of these drivers aren't even rookies. If we take a look at Linus Eriksson, he's currently fighting with Saf San, rookie, and Carlos Sainz, who is completely the opposite of a rookie. He made his first start in season 4, as he's now driving for Apex Pinnacle alongside Linus, doing what he can, and he's up into 13th position now. He's going to have to do quite a bit when it comes to strategy, using push to pass going into turn number 10. Thornburg, however, still leading almost an entire second ahead of you, Puff, as they now head through turn number 2. You are currently, in fact, outside of the aerodynamic push-to-pass range, and in fact, he doesn't get it, heading down the straight with only 14 laps to go. And he's doing what he can as the Scottish driver. Of course, it's going to show the British flag on the podium because we don't have Scottish flag on the hand, unfortunately. And it's the same for the graphics as Tommy drops down to 6th position, and if he's not careful, 7th will go as well. Here comes Gurovic going around the outside, and he's not quite able to do it. In fact, Tommy getting himself up into 5th position. This is the man from Hong Kong, using all the experience he's had ever since joining the ERL Formula E Series in Season 14. He got put into the American Series of IndyCar, and he's dropped down to 6th position. Kui up into 5th. The hyperdrive driver, he's been there for the longest time, and he hasn't ever had the opportunity to move up into the Formula E seat. But back on board with you, a Puff, and he's not really, I'm not too sure if he's enjoying being in the wake of Thornburg ahead. TJ Davis, another rookie in this series. He's beginning to experience a little bit of blistering on his softs, but he's found his way up into the top 3, so that's certainly nothing to scoff at. No incidents so far, so we're not really going to see the rigidity of the ERL 01 car, but we have had 21 seasons with this exact car model in Formula E. Eriksson fighting with Camino in that Power Motorsports car. Here we go on board with the Target Power driver alongside Eriksson heading up the hill. Still side by side, Romania versus Sweden, as you've got the Spanish Carlos Sainz right behind him. And that is push to pass available for everyone there. It's like an entire bargain sale as they head through turn number 10. And Sainz stays in 13th, Camino stays 12th, and Eriksson stays 11th. Lil Bun's currently in 10th for Newman Haas Racing, doing what he can do to just try and get anything out of that car. In comes Kui, first man to come into the pits, the hyperdrive pit box at the front. Medium's going on. Messian, Hexel, Mark, and Inocu all into the pits as well. Sebastian Messian from Prema Power Team in the number 98 car. That's a number 98 that has had a little bit of history in Formula E. Hopefully we can see similar results in IndyCar. The 68 hasn't actually been run in either of our series before, so hopefully Hexel can bring some glory to not just that number, but his country in being the first driver to come from Pakistan. As we look to the American driver of Carson Thornburg, America certainly being the nationality of choice for a lot of these drivers, but still definitely a global series in terms of where the drivers are from. Those soft tires are absolutely shot, but Thornburg passes the pits, but the Dragon Penske man in the number 9 of Viewer Path does come in. TJ Davis and Milcios Micah also into the pits. It's lap 7 of 16 here in Jerez for the preseason test. And look at how quickly some of these pit stops are being handled. Unless your name is Milcios, because the Polish man being held in the pits for too long there. On board with Ghosted, as he's on the back of Daf Sanchez, almost an unsafe release, and it was Saf San rather. Sanchez and San, both with the initials of SAN on the timing screen, so it's going to be a bit of a learning curve to differentiate the two drivers, but we'll get there eventually, I can tell you that much. Kwon Todoroki and his soft tires absolutely shot for the Japanese man. I believe he is the 4th ERL driver to come from Japan, with Ichinose, Yuki Suo, and Kei Hori all behind him. As in comes finally Carson Thornburg. Tommy now takes the lead for Revolution Racing. In terms of what you can classify as vintage and what you can't, this is as vintage as it gets in the ERL. You have a Revolution car leading the way with Tommy piloting it. Carlos Kynes driving for Apex Pinnacle, looking for a way to try and get past Kamino, who's also on the hards. Yua Puff has taken the net race lead. He's 14 seconds off the race lead itself. Saf San setting a fastest third sector of anyone. But he's 2 seconds ahead of the American behind him is Puff. So I think the Scottish driver is going to have a pretty good shot in this series. And in fact, I would argue with the type of performance he and his team are doing right now, I wouldn't be shocked if he wasn't already considered for an ERL drive. The top 4 drivers have all been considered and have all had an ERL drive, with the one being off the grid the longest so far being Carlos Kynes, who finally peels into the pits. He did 8 laps on those mediums, and in fact Olsen also in for Hyperdrive Racing. 7 laps to go, and Tommy leads from Kamino and Yua Puff. Out of the pits, they both come in synchronization, it seems. Bit of news on the Formula E end. There are rumors swirling that B Dragon Sonic will return to racing for seasons 23 and 24, and possibly even he could return in Indianapolis, which is quite a ways later on. But still, you can't help but wonder, how is that man going to do? It's been a while since he's last been in the seat of an ERL car, and in fact a new car generation, but he has driven in Abuja, so there's still precedent for him to do well. Look at that from Milsos, trying to defend from Francis Austin, heading up the hill. Push to pass active for Francis, heading down into turn 10, trying not to crash into the Polish driver in front of him. Tries to go around the outside, not quite able to do so. So he'll have to stay behind him for a while. Kamino comes in. Tommy stays out with 6 to go. Puff leads Thornburg and Davis, but still you are doing what he can. And I'm not too sure if what he can is going to be enough. Lil Bun setting a new fastest lap, 104.466. Took a while to get a new fastest lap, but of course had to come from the Newman Haas man. As they come through turn number 4 and into 5, Thornburg's going to have a lot on his plate to try and get past Puff in front of him. And I'm sorry for calling him Puff, but at the same time, if it wasn't for P. Diddy calling someone called Yua Puff wouldn't be bad if it wasn't for the fact that Diddy, the baby oil. I can't believe I had to mention P. Diddy on a race, man. But here comes Thornburg. Out of turn 10, they come through the final sector of the lap. The Chip Ganassi man on the back of the Dragon Penske driver in front of him. Into the pits comes Tommy. This is the fight for the lead, and it probably will go to the final lap as well. Here comes Thornburg with push to pass, and he takes the lead in the preseason test. It's Thornburg from Yua Puff and TJ Davis. And now for the Dragon Penske driver. What can he do in that position? Following Thornburg all this while, doing what he can to ensure a potential victory at the very least, and to reassure his Penske team that they have got the setups correct, because again, this is a spec series. This isn't like the ERL Formula E series where the chassis is the same, but you can change the setups, suspension. You can make your own suspension. You can get powertrains from powertrain providers who are also in the league. No, this is straight up spec with the Renault powertrain from Season 20 being in the back of all of these cars. Thornburg rounding out the final turn. 4 laps to go here in Jerez for the preseason test. This is going to be really reassuring for the top 4 teams, if you ask me. But at the same time, the tyre wear is not going to be that good. On board with Little Buns, trying to get past Milsos Maker. And as they head down, that is 6th position. Bortkar comes into the pits, however, in the yellow helmet. Those are another set of softs. No, those are mediums going on to the Andretti man to try and make sure that he can make his way to the end of this race. Lil Bunn sitting at fastest first sector of anyone, 17.733. That Newman Haas driver has been on an absolute roll when it's come to setting fastest sector times, and it makes sense. He's one of only 5 drivers on the soft compound of tyres. Look at this fight for position. Lewis Olsen looking at the man currently in 14th, looking to try and get past Hexel Mark, but trying to defend from Niven Colby at the same time as they rise up the hill. And Colby takes 14th, and Salos Kynes might even try and take 15th away. Here they come into 10. Look at that move from the Norwegian driver to take 14th. 3 laps to go, side by side, they still are. This is quite the fight for position. If only we had it up front, it would be so much better. But instead, we have Thornburg domination. It might be here to stay as Ghosted comes into the pits for a second stop. Olsen on the back of Axel Mark as they head into turn number 1. This is the fight for 12th position. There goes the Norwegian, taking 12th away. Colby looking at that, taking notes and thinking, yeah, I can do that too. But he's not quite close enough to do it yet. And with Camino, Tommy, look at that from Tommy. What a lunge from the Hong Kong man to get past the 2 red cars in front of him and get himself up into 15th. Goes down the inside on Niven Colby as well. That is quite the move from a man who can pretty much say that he's a veteran of the ERL. But if he's a veteran, what does that make guys like Revo and U-Cable in the ERL Formula E series? Does that make them unks or something like that? I don't know. I don't use Gen Z terminology. Looking with Francis Austin as Puff and TJ Davis, Quee and Austin all into the pits. Carson Thornburg stays out with 2 to go. Lil Buns staying out as well. Soft tires going on to Ewa Puff's car for the Dragon Penske team. Think he's going to come out of the pits still in the top 10 maybe. There goes Colby past and Quan Todoroki. So he's going to come out of the pits in the 11th position behind Todoroki. As someone who has experience with My Hero Academia in both good and bad ways, reading out the name Todoroki just gives me flashbacks to times I wanted to leave in the past. But still, Quan doing a very good job in 10th position. And with 2 laps to go, look at the state of those mediums. There's certainly going to be drivers who are going to be trying to do one-stop strategies once we get to race day and everything in St. Pete. But there's no way that they're going to have to last this long. 42% tire wear on the mediums. They theoretically will make it to the end. The question is, would you want to make it to the end with those tires looking as they do? But he does have an 11-second lead, even if he has a puncture. It's going to befall Lil Buns first, as he's on 26% tire wear. He needs to pit. Buns must pit soon, or else he's going to risk a puncture. I don't think his tires will puncture. They might puncture by the end of the race, actually, because this is the penultimate lap. 23% tire wear. If Buns doesn't pit at the end of this lap, his tires will puncture by the time we start lap 16. Once he exits turn number 2, I can predict this right now. If Buns doesn't pit, that is going to be all 4 of his tires going pop, and will bring to an end his really good looking preseason test. Thornburg, however, heading down into the final turn to start the final lap in Jerez. First ever rolling start in ERL history, and it's produced a test like this And Buns is staying out. Ooh, that's not going to end well. Still on board with Tommy, the man currently in 4th, and he's actually having a pretty good preseason test. I'm pretty sure for Revolution, the main idea was to test out how well the tire wear was on the hards, and you know what? They did quite a good job at it. 12%, 11% for the Newman Haas man. He's certainly not dropping pace, however. 9%. He lost 2% through that entire turn. Fastest first sector going to Ewa Puff in 9th position. Ewa Puff, I swear to God. But coming through the final sector, 23%. 5% for Lil Buns. His tires will pop soon. It's going to be Carson Thornburg as Sebastian Messian further back, getting a penalty for track limits. He's got a puncture. Messian with a puncture. And I think Buns might have one too, as Thornburg comes across the line and takes the preseason test. And that's for puncture. All of the tires for Buns go up in smoke. Where is Gurovich? There goes Gurovich on the line. Here comes Tommy. There goes Tommy. My goodness me. At the very end, so many tire issues with the Firestones. Honestly, at the end of a race like this, my goodness. And RQ getting a time penalty for causing a collision with Messian, whose tires, they've seen better days. They surely have. And he's got a lot of damage. He's got no front wing as well. And there's rain falling at Jerez as well. This is just insult to injury for the Prema driver, who now comes across the line at 190 kilometers per hour. Whatever those are. Not too sure why we have a podium here. And just like the early days of the ERL, standardized suits. And unlike the early days of the ERL, standardized helmets as well, where you're only allowed to change the color just because it makes it easier. But it is Carson Thornburg who takes the preseason test from Lewis Olsen and Linus Eriksson, the Swede, coming across the line in 3rd, making it a 2-3 for Viking drivers. Then it's Mikhail Gurovich for Dragon Penske, Lil Buns, Quan Todoroki, David Kamino, David Borkar, Max Borkar rather, Ghosted, and Nevan Colby, the top 10. Outside of it, you've got the 2 Revolution drivers of Hexel, Mark and Tommy, Francis Austin, TJ Davis, Saf San, Ewa Puff, Salas Kynes, Oakwe, Elliot Deli, Milstios, Micah, Enoch Q, and Sebastian Messian. It's been quite the preseason test. We will see you guys next time then for the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg when the ERL IndyCar Series returns.